7:53 here on KTRS. Jay Kanzler, Kelly Jackson. On the phone with us is Steve Roberts, ABC News political analyst. Good morning, Steve.
Hi, Jay.
It's we're coming down to crunch time, and the cabinet picks are coming out a little slowly right now. But why don't you tell us what's new with that?
Well, one new announcement just this morning. Trump campaign said they're going to pick Ben Carson as Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. An odd pick in some ways. Carson himself said that he didn't feel qualified to run a big government agency. After all, he's a medical doctor. But on the other hand, this is a guy, he's an African-American. He grew up in poverty in Detroit. The story of his boyhood, very much part of his political message and political personality, and this is a valuable set of experiences to bring to the job. I don't think he's really going to run the department. I think he's going to be kind of the spiritual head. But, as opposed to some privileged kid who grew up in the suburbs, this is a guy who knows what he's talking about in terms of urban neighborhoods. So that certainly is a plus.
It seems to me that Dr. Carson had indicated not only that he didn't think he was qualified, but I thought he had lost interest in a position within the Trump administration, or at least he had seemed to imply that.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I think Ben Carson has a lot of ambitions. Let's remember he did run for president, and while he kind of portrays himself as always this reluctant amateur and someone who's heeding the call of his adoring public, the fact is he clearly is a man of great ambition and relishes the spotlight, loved being in those debates, loved being invited on Sunday TV shows. So he has this whole persona of this humble and cautious man, but there's no doubt that, like for many other people, ambition burns very brightly in Ben Carson.
Do we see in Dr. Carson's appointment some of the lack of experience that is kind of throughout the Donald Trump choices?
Well, to some extent. I mean, I think that's a fair comment. Trump has talked a lot about draining the swamp. And in some ways, there is a value in having folks who are not Washington insiders. You look, for instance, at the choice for Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos, and she's a very experienced person in education reform efforts, but has never served in Washington. She's been very active in her home state of Michigan. On the other hand, the drain the swamp idea was always kind of a phony. The fact is that running this government is an extremely demanding profession. It's a profession. You would never ask an amateur to operate on you. You'd never ask an amateur engineer to build a bridge. You'd never ask an amateur accountant to file your tax returns. Why would you ask an amateur to run your government? So I think what Trump is realizing on some level is that if you're going to be an effective president, you've got to, at least to some extent, have people who know what they're doing and have been around the block before. And so a lot of this talk about draining the swamp, it sounds good politically, but it's very impractical when it comes to actually running a government.
What are you hearing about Secretary of State? I know that Mitt Romney was being talked about, but it looks like maybe he's widening the pool.
Yeah. I think he wanted to name Mitt Romney. I think that he understood that not only was he himself very inexperienced in foreign policy, but that there was a great deal of nervousness and anxiety around the world on the part of foreign leaders, economic investors, military leaders about the Trump presidency. And Romney clearly would have been a very calming and reassuring appointment. But folks within his own circle have tried very hard to stop Romney. Now there's talk of a man named John Huntsman. John Huntsman, not very well known to the public, but he was governor of Utah. But more importantly, he was actually ambassador to China under Barack Obama. He's a true China expert. He speaks Chinese. And he would accomplish a lot of the symbolic value of Mitt Romney. He's widely regarded in the more establishment or moderate wing of the Republican Party. In fact, he ran briefly and unsuccessfully for the presidential nomination 4 years ago. But he doesn't have the baggage Romney does, because while he was no fan of Donald Trump, he wasn't nearly as outspoken or as strident in his criticisms. And so it would be interesting if he picked Huntsman. He'd accomplish a lot of the things a Romney nomination would accomplish, but without the furor on the part of Trump loyalists who deeply resent the role that Romney played in the campaign.
It'll be interesting to see where things go from here. Thank you so much, Steve Roberts. And now,